So let's talk about more women than you can shake a stick at. So romance is the biggest genre in the world, and within romance there are several subgenres, and a very interesting aspect of what's come out of that is the harem. Now, harems are real. They exist in history and maybe like today, but European travelers that went to the Middle East and were introduced to the idea of harems were not allowed inside. So, imperialist Europeans did what they always did, and they fetishized the other, and they imagined crazy things, and thus the idea of harems being a big debauchery thing that they're not allowed to go into has been what's lasted in a lot of our popular culture. And that's the last I'm going to talk about that, because we're going to talk about the fun debauch part that's actually in the media. Fun. If you want to read more about like actual harems or the effects of media on reality that they have and how it kind of shifts what they are, I suggest this book that I came across in my slight research, Otherness and the Media, The Ethnography of the Imagined and the Imaged by Hamid Nafki and Tashomi Gabrielle. I should remember to put a link down below. So I'm sorry weebs, but some normies watch this channel, so I'm going to give a slight definition. A harem romance is where one person has a choice of different characters with which to go out with. Generally, a harem is one male and several women and maybe a dude in there for flavor. And a reverse harem is one woman and several men. Generally, it's understandable if the harem protagonist does not have a personality. And some people play with that, some people don't. It's all up to like reader and culture. What I'm saying is this genre is pretty trashy, even as trashy as some romance kinda gets. So a self-insert is very understandable, and the less characteristics to give the protagonist, the easier it is to self-insert. Who do has characteristics, it's each of the women in the harem. Usually they have one quirk or one obstacle that makes it so they stand out among the others. Very rarely is like the goal of the protagonist to have a harem of women. Usually they want like a simple life, or they want like one woman, but either they can't decide, thus they're in a situation where in the holding pattern with a lot of women, or they just happen to be in a situation where they could do a lot with a lot of their options. There's also probably roots in dating simulators where there are several women for the dating simulator player to pursue. And each of those women are like routes and paths that they can do, and then you play through that particular woman's story, and there's replay value in making different choices and going for different women. Several women shows are based off of these dating simulators. How this breaks down by show is, as a series, there's kind of like a monster of the week kind of feel, but a girl of the week kind of feel. For one, how the guy meets the individual women and add them to his harem, or how each of those women then have problems that need to be solved, and through the main character helping solve those problems, they become desirable to the woman. So the tension of the story in a normal romance is, how are these two people going to get together? There's an additional tension in the harem romance where you say, which girl will the main character choose? And then how will they deal with all of the other women? And actually, fan culture plays into this too, as fans choose their favorite waifu or favorite character that they want to have end up with the main character, which is cool and fine. But this also leaves several harem shows for a bad ending or an unsatisfying ending where the main character doesn't choose everyone and just continues the holding pattern, perhaps indefinitely. If this sounds familiar to several people that aren't familiar with the genre, it might feel a little bit like a love triangle, but instead of a love triangle, it's a 1,000 love triangles that are all intercrossing and intersectioning. Now watching that and knowing how tired people are of love triangles in the English-speaking kind of consumers, you might be saying, oh man, that seems really tiring. And it's true, there is a lot of fatigue that can come with the genre, especially if you like resolution. It's especially weird for me, because I'm the kind of guy that likes the both answer. Like, oh, do you want ice cream or pie? Both. Do you like this picture of my hair or this picture with me in a hat? Both. I'm a both kind of answer. And within any game where it's an option, The harem ending is the best ending. Like, everyone's happy, everyone's satisfied, no one is traumatized and rejected. Everyone's happy, and you just have 7 girlfriends that share you. Now, in real life, that would be an obscene amount of work. I barely talk to 7 people even before this quarantine. Adult committed relationships take a lot of your time and energy. In a harem, these questions can come up and be dealt with, like either people aren't that needy, or or there's some kind of change in force that takes out one of the complications of modern day romance. But everyone being in a relationship isn't necessary for the harem romance because it's mostly about the options and the aesthetic of several different women all together in a show. So a lot of the classic harems, which connect to the real life harems, is they cut it down to location. There's several women that all live in one building with the main character, who's the only one there. Sometimes this could be because there's the only boy at an all-girls school. It could also have ties to the actual historical harems, which this is my last mention of them, perhaps. Having everyone live in the same place, like a giant house or mansion or harem tent, cuts down on traveling and questions of how can the main character continually have contact with these women. I'm not going to source it, but there is one reference that says that people tend to fall in love after they have several encounters with a person. So that's why neighbors and coworkers often have romances, because it's someone they continually have interactions with. And everyone being in location makes it slightly more believable that, yeah, maybe these people can all get along. Now, of course, I don't know, it's gotta be a classic by now. Tenchi Muyo, the original harem. So in Tenchi Muyo, Tenchi's unassuming Japanese guy who lives in kind of like a temple, in a big old house in the mountains in Japan. And he gets lots of aliens that just up and invade his space, and they all fall in love with him. Tenchi Muyo is a special one because they keep recreating the same kind of culture. They retell the same story with like either a different Tenchi or a different universe Tenchi, and find different reasons why these women all seem to be emotionally connected to Tenchi, but like no in-between person wins. And the show ends unsatisfactory with the holding pattern continue of the 7 women, including 2 sisters that are actually his cousins, trying to pursue him. And later movies are actually kind of cute in that he seems to continue with it forever. Like, my favorite part of the Ryo-Oki movie is when Tenchi's about to get, like, spied on in the bathroom, and the alien woman moves through the wall to do some stuff, and he scolds her and tells her to go, and she, like, obeys him. Like, harem ending. And it's fun. Should I say that all of this is done in fun? For the most part. A lot of times the women like interacting and being friends with one another and living closely with them, as well as they like the main character and they can tolerate it. Now, I try to say mostly English names for animes because you can search it and find it, but also because I'm garbage at pronouncing and recognizing Japanese words. A classic harem show that I watched, Ai Yori Ashi, it's a bunch of fucking vowels, is about 2 bougie fucks who fall in love, but one bougie fuck's family doesn't like the other bougie fuck, so he's kind of like an orphan, so they live in a mansion and they want to get married, but the family doesn't like it, so they're kind of in hiding. And then there are a bunch of other women that move into the same building, and they all kind of fall in love with the main character, but he loves the other bougie fuck. So another classic is To Love Rou, which is about, again, aliens falling in love with a real-life boy, and it grows more and more all the women that are in love with him, but he doesn't seem to make a move on any in particular, because they're all very scary and they'll probably be killed by someone else. That's not the intention. It's supposed to be fun. It's funny and ridiculous. And also exploitative, and there's a lot of character design that goes into it that people appreciate and make posters out of. I should get more posters. Oh, fuck. So, Fruit of Gracia was an interesting one that came out a few years ago. And the twist to that one is everyone is a bunch of psychopathic murderers, and the main character is himself a psychopathic murderer. So he doesn't have a personality because he's a psychopathic murderer and it's been trained out of him. And a lot of the girls are like different kinds of broken, and he needs to figure out in order to survive. And I ended up dropping this one, but it seemed like a really interesting take on the haremness of it. They all live together in a dorm, by the way. Then there's Irae. So Irae and Mockingjay, and there's a bunch of battle shonen, because it's for boys. So in American media, a lot of our shows actually have a romance angle to it. It's a subplot. And that's because romance is really cool, and we actually all really like seeing it. And it's the rare person that writes a romance novel that can admit that, yeah, this is why I'm here. I don't care about face punching, I care about romance. And honestly, we all do. And people that read straight up romance are the bravest heroes among us all. So in Irae, it's about a bunch of supernatural fighting girls that are all connected to one person that makes them stronger. You know, when they kiss and stuff. And the harem aspect comes from the one main character being made more and more powerful by more people joining his team, but also they're all interested in him sexually, and they kind of keep each other in check. There's also a weird transsexual aspect to it, where at one point a Irae fighter, I think that's probably not what they're called, but fuck it, is a man, and he joins the male main character's team, and there's like, they have to kiss to join one another, but then the man starts transitioning into a woman in the show, and I don't know, it says some weird things about romance and what we expect, but like, I don't know, it's just kind of there. I don't know if it says anything major. It would be cool if it did. I would watch that video. Too bad the modern anime discourse is only about the most recent season of anime, right? Right? Too bad. I found a bunch of lists that talk about Oran High School Host Club as a harem, which I guess there's one girl in a host club with a bunch of other dudes. But like, I just heard it's cute. Maybe it's fun. It's purely fun, and it's one of the not rare harems. Isn't it really that rare? It feels like it's rare to have a reverse harem. But that might also be because I am a layman. Monster Moon is quite the fetish trash. It's about a guy who lives in a house with a bunch of monster women, and they all love him. And he's legally not allowed to touch them, so he tries not to, so the indecisiveness is forced. But also, it has a harem ending where everyone marries him, so... Best of all worlds? I don't know. Then there's Love Hina, which is a classic going to school, live in a mansion. There's lots of quirky girls. Some of them are very violent. And I guess No Game No Life turns into a harem, but we all know who the main girl is. We know. We know what's going. So the other aspect that I think there's a lot more potential for crossover to English media is the harem anime where they take place in a school, or where it's like normal dating, but there's like a lot of dating that happens. I'd say probably the most infamous harem show is School Days. Because in School Days, episode 2 or 3, the guy falls in love and chooses a girl, but then he gets bored and decides to cheat on her, and it kind of ends horrifically. It's not a great show overall. It's notable mostly for the main character being terrible in that way, and its ending. But it deals in this way with the consequences of actions. Like in a lot of these harem shows, part of the fantasy and the fun is not dealing with people feeling scorned or people not wanting to share a boyfriend. It runs up against that wall, like, no they won't, in fact murder happens. So Shuffle was a game first, about dating kind of monster girls, not like the Monster Moon monster girls, but like deciding what demon or angel in order to date. So you think when you watch the anime, it's gonna go with love triangle, it's gonna go with one of the two main girls, because they're like the most dramatic. One's Prince of Hell and the other's like the Prince of Heaven. It's that kind of different thing. But instead the anime chooses a minor character in your mind. But the twist is she has just as dramatic a story and is just as important as the other two girls. So that was kind of neat and cool in a way, but also very much an advertisement to play Shuffle the game, or the sequels, or one of those. And very, very connected to video games is The World Only God Knows, which is a show about a main character who has played every dating sim and unlocked multiple paths and knows how they all work, and thus is chosen to do the same thing in real life. I think there was like a good couple of seasons of that show, and I eventually got bored of it. But they there were several drops and implications that like after he conquered or dated a girl to a point where like he unlocks her heart and she falls in love with him, the girl has amnesia so he can go and do it all over again with another girl. And it plays with this very weird idea of being manipulative on purpose in order to date a woman, in order to make her fall in love with you, but also that the main character does this to himself. He doesn't then fall in love with anyone in particular, and it's left an open question if the girls remember it or not, because sometimes there's a hint that their memories might still be there. And it seems like it would be interesting to see, but the show is just really, really long for me, or the manga. I might catch up with that one day, just if they do something interesting, but there's a chance that they might not. Because, you know, at the core nugget of this, there is experiencing a love story, and you really like to see those go on for a long time. And one such show that did is Clannad, a show where there are multiple paths to go, but even past choosing a girlfriend and high school, they went into what their life would be like, how many children they have, will one of them get sick and die of cancer, and then raising a child as a single parent. Which is wild for a romance show to do. And I should mention this, since it comes from Japan, Japan has a different kind of take to media as us. They don't have the same 3-act structure kind of beat that a lot of English speaking has taken. And then especially in romance, as opposed to English romance, which is very much so taken a very sure, definite route for how a lot of the romances happen, because people want to read it that way. They want to see two people meet, they want to see them meet cute, they want to see them both go for their own goals, and then they want to see the man buckle on his goals so he could be with the woman. And of course he's handsome, and someone's brother, and rugged, or some shit like that. They want to see that, because that's good, and that's tempting. But not so with a lot of Japanese media. You know, like, perhaps, I don't know. And of course, that statement isn't, like, universal. There is a lot of structure within a show and within a genre of what it is, as far as different quirks and different cliches appear when they're popular, especially in kind of a trashy, low gates to entry kind of media such as anime and manga and light novels. There was Boring Girlfriend, or Saikano, a show where a boy puts together a large video game team of artists, writers, actresses, I guess a model, in order to make a visual novel. And in this one, it's less that the main character is indecisive and more that he's a dumbass? I don't know. Being stupid is also a great character achievement to have in order to start a harem. Oh, all these beautiful women around me all the time. Oh well, I'm not interested in any of them. I want to mention Devil is a Part-Timer. One, because it's one of my favorite animes, but also because it's kind of a pseudo-harem. Well, it is a harem, but it more takes the aesthetics of it. Like, you don't know for sure. You know who he's going to end up with, but that's not the point of the story, and it's part of the driving questions of what's up with this guy. Where he does have lots of women that kind of are around him and fall in love with him, but his main goal is conquering the world through working at McDonald's. Of course, I have another video all on that one. You can watch Devil Part-Timer, favorite anime. But less than being about romance, it uses the aesthetics, anime or story, it uses the aesthetics of a harem story. So there are several women, they have different quirks, they have different needs, and he helps out with them, but also he's not interested in being romantic with anyone in particular, or he's ashamed and shy about it. But it appeals to the same crowd, and having lots of cute girls in your show boosts it a lot, because there's cute character designs that people can latch onto and make that popular through that way. And that way, the series Bakemonogatari and its other named things are also a harem, and he goes through a girl, she has a problem, and the stories unfold from there. But it's mostly aesthetic, because he's chosen the girl, Sanjigahara, to go out with. Like, she claimed him in a way, but he's still helping everyone and, like, getting his ass beat for any girl that happens to have a sniff of supernatural and be cute. And yes, several of these do include middle schoolers. I'm sorry, it's Japan. Japan has a problem with women. Is it my fault? Is it my fault? Similar to Devil is a Part-Time, one of the biggest animes of the last decade, Sword Art Online uses the aesthetics of a harem. Sure, there's main best girl, Asuna, but also there is what Digibro has called the Scorned Women's Club. Kirito meets a woman, deals with her problems, just like in a harem, and then it ends, and then the girl follows him around forever in like a club of other girls with Kirito and his girlfriend Asuna. It doesn't make sense in the story or on a character level, but it makes sense to make the show a harem aesthetic. Give it that harem feeling to it. Give it that harem boost. And also so there's no stories about Klein. No one really liked Klein anyway, fuck that guy. If you're very excited for all the topics in this video, please leave a like. I have Girls Bravo in my notes. That's a harem, and complete trash. It's about a guy who's afraid of women, which is thus why he doesn't choose one, but also he gets teleported into a world where only women exist, and all the women just love men, because it's so rare to find a man. I have nothing to say about that. So obviously there aren't a lot of one-on-one comparisons to harem stories in America. A few years ago, I decided that I wanted to write a harem for America. I wanted a harem story, but with English people. I started writing it, but then I ended up not making it a harem and made it like a real girl in there, and it became my first novel. But originally, I wanted to do a harem with lots of sex in it, and instead I have like 4 sex scenes with one woman, so I guess culture's deep. I don't know why I failed, bro. I had another idea. Writing's wild. But there are some harem stories from the English-speaking world, and we're going to talk about those too. One is Alfie, Dearest, a story about an ugly British man that has sex with lots of women. I watched this movie. I don't remember this movie. I believe it sucked. I was so annoyed with how ugly the man was. I was so annoyed. I hated it so much. I think it spawned from like the 70s and 80s, like counter hippie kind of exploration of sexualities that happened back then and in some movies and some media, but like, I'm not for sure. Maybe Movie Bob will do a movie on it if you make enough stink about it. I'm not. James Bond! Motherfucking James Bond is the closest thing to a Western hero with a harem. Of course, with Bond girls, there's multiple Bond girls in a movie. Bond conquers them all because he's James Bond, and the script said that he gets to. It's kind of misogynist, and as Hulk pointed out in several long novel-length posts on James Bond, it's very pernicious. James Bond is softcore porn for men. It's what they want to pretend to be, what they want. It does not elevate the storytelling of the harem show, because James Bond is trash. Like, probably my third English media thing that is most harem-like is Futurama, Beast with a Billion Backs. Now, Futurama, Beast with a Billion Backs is interesting because it's an entire planet's population dating a sentient planet. A planet has a harem, and that harem is Earth, and it loves everyone. And it's interesting how Futurama ramps up this kind of brain-twisting way to think of relationships, where its goal was not just to talk about how Fry wants to get with his old ex-girlfriend Colleen, and also for some reason he's broken up with Leela again, but whatever. But once Fry starts dating his ex Colleen, he finds out Colleen has several boyfriends, and several of them live with her, and she has her own reverse harem. But unlike a lot of Japanese media, it's not a weird holding pattern. They're all legit her boyfriends, and they all like legit share her. And then this transitions to the very unconventional relationship of an entire planet dating another thing. And when the other planet, after it has sex with the entire population of Earth, says that he wants to go on a date with the entire population of Earth, Earth decides as a whole if they want to try out this relationship. And there's no like jealousy, there's no like, because everyone can get solid interface and contact from this multi-point of view singular being. Like, people don't play it off like they're jealous of one another, because they can all get equal attention from this thing that can equally provide for everyone. It's so weird and big and mind-bending and interesting in itself. It's a very fantastic, high-concept harem idea. So I'm kind of out of explicit harems in English media, but not out. I'm saving one super special surprise. But we don't not have this concept in America, in Europe, in Western, whatever, I don't care. Instead, what has actually formed is the love triangle, which I consider very close, but like a simplified version of the harem. For one, you could fit it in a shorter movie. For two, there's less characters to hire. Like, you don't have to hire as many women in a love triangle, I guess. Now I'm really sad. Now I'm making myself sad. But the love triangle, there's this idea where there's two people, they have two different qualities, and you don't know which one the main character is going to choose. And part of the tension is, who do we choose, along with how do they make that relationship work? And with that in mind, I have a lot of Western harem-ish shows to share with you. The biggest one in my mind is How I Met Your Mother, which is about a man who dates a lot of women in New York until he eventually meets someone and then dates her, and then she dies, and then he ends up with Robin anyway. Like we all thought he should have. But like, the only difference between a harem and a dating show like How I Met Your Mother or like a Gossip Girl, besides the occasional love triangle, like Sex in the City, is you have the person, you go through their problems, you solve their problems, and you dump them in a couple episodes, or in one episode, or it's about how you cannot get by that one person's problems before the episode ends, and Ted Mosby is alone wondering if he'll ever meet a woman. Like, I don't put a lot of separation between those kind of shows and harem shows, because they're both about simulating dates and people's problems and different aesthetics of these different characters. Just, the harem hangs on to all the women and keeps that question kind of dangling, for the most part. But I've also noticed a lot of the harem or serial dating type shows that I've seen are in some kind of subgenre. You'll have Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where she dates a couple of different vampires and humans. And women, maybe? It kind of takes the aesthetic of a harem, and instead of having one main character, there are several main characters, or an ensemble show, and then they can serial date, break up, mix and match with one another. Instead of one person dealing with it, there's different personalities all mixing and matching inside of one kind of thing. And that it's kind of thing done in like the L Word and in soap operas and dramas, but it's removed from the harem aesthetic of one person going through, because really, in the end, it's all of these stories being presented to the viewer, to the consumer, of a relationship and how these relationships work and this cute interaction of romance. What's it matter if it's all with one person or if it's several different pieces in the ensemble? It only matters in the aesthetics and if the cultural taboo and maybe the strain of the writers to make all this happen in front of you. Because what matters is it's supposed to be fun, and it's supposed to be cute. And it's supposed to appeal to us on an emotional level and make us satisfied when choices are or are not made, and see people make each other happy, and see the drama that unfolds from people's lives being intertwined and separated. In the English-speaking world, we have kind of twisted this idea. We take this idea of the harem. This idea of the harem is utilized to twist expectations of the reader, such as in the show Raising Hope, a show that I love. There's a cousin in the pilot in the first couple episodes that kind of disappears for the rest, and he comes back in a later episode as a part of a harem thing. The cousin is known to join cults and weird stuff, but the arc of the episode is getting this brother back in the harem, getting back in this relationship with a woman and several brother husbands, because he only thought about being in a relationship with the woman, and he didn't consider being in a friendship with the other husbands. And it's actually a pretty cute take on the whole thing, and it's only like one episode in mini about like different lifestyles and a young 20-something raising a daughter. It's weird and it's kind of nice, and I feel like that's really the point of the whole My Name is Earl, Raising Hope kind of genre of poor, kind of dumb people existing, is that it just kind of ends up being nice in the end. It also shows up in the weird Battlestar Galactica prequel. I just thought it was of note. It was a literal harem I could think of. In English-speaking literature, it very much ties into our idea of heterosexual monogamy. One man, one woman. And a lot of times there are cheaters. We call them cheaters when they have multiple girlfriends or try to like have themselves this little harem. In the 97 movie How to Be a Player, one man has several girlfriends and they all show up at a party at once. Of course it's comedy and it's fun and you get the little romance relationship bits of all of them, and he just can't help it. His motivation is that it's really nice talking with all these women, and why wouldn't he be with as many women as possible, and they're so nice to be with, I guess, right? You can't be with one woman all the time. But then we laugh, and it's funny when it all falls apart on him in the end, because they all meet each other. There's the consequence, is they're angry, and thus the cheater, the player, has been shut down. My partner is reading a story on early American dating practices, where in high school, popular kids used to have several girlfriends and boyfriends as a status symbol, and it seemed more like work, like you have to have 7 boyfriends to mean that you're important, and it kind of holds over in certain aspects. There are a lot of people that date, they don't go steady, they don't have a single boyfriend or girlfriend. They're free to date and have fun with multiple people, so they know like what they really want in life, which can be nice and can be good, but isn't something that's reflected strictly in our media in a sense of something that's to be ridiculed. Whenever I watch anything in media, in the English stories, it's always one boy and one girl, and it's never one boy dating and getting a flavor of a lot of ones, other than like How I Met Your Mother, but it's not at once. He doesn't date them all at the same time. The example that comes to my mind is Daria. In the show Daria, Daria's younger sister dates several boys at once. In fact, they're all like best friends, and sometimes they go on group dates where the 3 of them all take her on a date. Oh man, I just remembered this is also in Letterkenny. Letterkenny, a show I also talked to before. There's so many links to other things I've talked about. In Letterkenny, the little sister dates hockey players, and she dates 2 in particular hockey players, and at one point she's like, having 2 boyfriends is a lot of hassle. I'm just gonna go with one of you. Who wants to date me? And the friendship of the 2 hockey players suffers when one is spending time with Katie and the other is not, and it's adorable. And at the end, they choose each other and they break up with Katie. It's kind of great. I love it. I love it in a way. But there's another example of an entire team of hockey players all with one girlfriend, and all terribly in love with her, and she breaks up with the rest of the team, and there are things. Letterkenny's pretty great. Letterkenny's pretty nice and funny. So I have 3 more examples of harems to bring up. One would be a very literal harem, a poly relationship, big love, where I never saw this show. I only read analysis about it, and I don't think we had the channel? Maybe. Anyway, it's about a man with several wives, and they all live together, and the man was kind of portrayed as kind of dopey, and the women kind of ran everything, and there were a mess of kids. And there should be more analysis of Big Love so that I don't have to go and do it, but if people tell me to do it, I'll do it. But it's a reality show. Like, it's not media. So there isn't an overlined through line. It's America was focused on this family for a few years as a weird thing, as this emergence of polyamory in serious thought, and how we kind of think and how we decide and how we try to think about this situation not just as something fun in media, not just as several little romances going simultaneously, but as a coherent unit of family that can exist. And I'm sure there's a lot of other people that actually are polygamists and actually think about polygamy that are more qualified to talk about it. So I'm gonna shut the fuck up and talk about Mambo number 5. Which I think Mambo number 5, number 1 is just meant to be fun. more than just a person dating or being in love with a lot of women. It's just fun. It's a fun song. I think that should be what we take away from harem media as opposed to real life polygamy. One is fun and one is work, but sometimes they intermix. It can be interesting to see them intermix though. And I almost forgot Robert Heinlein. Robert Heinlein in his books, was the series even? Anyway, similar to James Bond, Robert Heinlein has several books about the competent man archetype. As mentioned on Overly Sarcastic Productions, Robert Heinlein inventing this man that's kind of a jack of all trades and can handle anything is the James Bond kind of I can do whatever because I'm very competent kind of guy. He has a harem, essentially. What Robert Heinlein does is every woman in his universe is single. And there are no relationships. So how this works is like everyone's free to go and have sex and have dinner and date and have a child with whoever they want. And it's fine and there are no hard feelings. And you can also leave and go back. So it seems like it's a nice freedom kind of feminist thing. But how this actually works in the novels is every woman who is seen by James Bond, the man, the competent man, is available to be slept with and sleeps with the main character. So, time enough for 3 women. So it ends up more than a little trashy and more than a little smutty for what it's supposed to be and what it masquerades as a harem, essentially. Your harem is the universe. Any written woman will be described in her detail and slept with by the main character. Very James Bond-esque kind of thing. Robert Heinlein also makes an explicit harem in Stranger in a Strange Land, where a super-powered angel thing starts a big sex cult where everyone has sex with one another as a giant sex harem thing. So that's real cool. Almost forgot about Robert Heinlein. He's a very strong footnote, and people... I hear the names of like Have You Leapt Through Time and Starship Troopers, but rarely do I hear what they mean and their effects or hear them described as a harem very often. And honestly, this video is also a hard race to get this topic out before Overly Sarcastic Productions chooses to, so cool. And other than Big Love, there's also the biggest harem show in America, The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, a show where one man or one woman romances several people in a row, and the tension is deciding who they will go out with and how the relationship will work. The Bachelor is our trashy version of a harem. It is absolute trash, absolute awful, and I don't think I've seen more than 3 seasons. Like a decade ago. It's so long running. So this show, this concept, this idea obviously has some kind of appeal to Americans, to English speakers. It's just weird that it isn't in more of our media, or explicitly in more of our media. We have to like place it in high school or place it on the moon or put vampires there in order to embrace this storyline and this kind of tensionous romance that we obviously love and can't get enough of because there are still running seasons of The Bachelor and Bachelorette. And the thing is, like, maybe we like the idea of dating multiple people, but there is a minimum of fallout in The Bachelor and Bachelorette. Like, yeah, sure, there's people crying, there are people that feel rejected, there's people that get angry at one another, and there's stress that goes along with all reality television. Once a woman is rejected in The Bachelor, a man rejected in The Bachelorette, they're gone. They're off the show. They get walked away. They have one more interview. There's not like a prolonged several days breakup of, oh my god, oh this person, oh they're so gone, I miss them so much. And they're not allowed to tweet or give the media an idea of what they're feeling for like months or weeks afterward until after the television shows air. There isn't that catharsis for us to really relate to the scorned and rejected women of the shows, of The Bachelor. And there are 2 pieces of media that I'm going to talk about that kind of relate to that, which one would be Californication. Californication is a show I did a video on, but in it it's pretty much about a guy who's stuck between a fun, crazy sex, drug-driven writer fantasy life and a domestic home life. And he keeps screwing up the domestic home life and falling into the cocaine and the sex and randomness. But we see how that affects him being rejected. We see his wife or ex-wife or baby mama continually deal with like the hardships of being rejected but still being in this man's life. And it's interesting and compelling and dramatic. But we deal with the fallout of his consequences in ways that we don't in other kind of harem-y shows where there's a lot of dating and a lot of rejection that happens. And the last one, I don't know how I feel about mentioning this, but I think it's notable, last one is an actual game that actually draws on these consequences to relationships, and that game is called Sisterly Lust, available on Steam. But Sisterly Lust is about a boy who's been estranged from his mother and sisters, and he comes to live with them. And he falls in love with one of his 3 sisters and or his mother. At this time, I would like to direct you to my other video, How to Defend Groping in Anime, instead of dealing with any arguments about that stuff on here. We're allowed to explore taboo subjects in media. It's neat and fun, and if you don't want to explore it, then you don't have to play the game. Playing a video game is the ultimate safe word because you can turn off the game at any moment. So we're just going to talk about the interesting things it does. I'm not embracing anything in real life. If you demand an apology from this video, please leave a like. Okay, so in Sisterly Lust, there is a harem ending. More importantly, even with the harem ending, there's fallout with any of the 4 women you're in a relationship when that fact comes to light with the other women. There's emotional fallout, there's fights, there are consequences to happening. If you've dated 2 of your sisters and one is like, oh man, that's gross, and your mother's like, I can't deal with this, and they can reject you. There is a hard emotional fallout from this thing happening, and in several of the storylines, there are parts of your family that you will never see again that will reject you if they haven't been included in your harem. And really, the best, happiest ending only exists with dating each of your sisters and your mother, and you all flee the country. That's the happiest ending. The harem ending is the happiest one. Though individually, each of the girls are cute and nice, but also your sister, I'm sorry. I just thought it was interesting. It didn't even have to be about sisters, but it was, because they're all in a house together. So it does fit the harem theme, and it does end in a literal harem, and I just thought it was neat. And for some reason, I thought I could share that with you all. One more harem taken from real life, but that has hit our media hard, is Tiger King. Tiger King is a documentary that explores real-world people and their antics of backwater Florida, where they have and run their own zoos specifically to have these wild and exotic animals, such as tigers. The way the documentary is set, it is very biased to the Tiger King's point of views. It skips over the more exploitative parts of running your own amateur zoo, and that is taking volunteers and underpaying people to help run it and feed your numerous tigers. And people are willing to do this to live in an area without water or electricity or a working bathroom because they just love tigers so damn much. And that is how Joe Exotic is able to exploit people and have cheaper labor. In Tiger King, there is a person with a harem. Instead of just taking people for their labor and underpaying them and making them live in crappy dorms and trapping them in a situation where they have to work for the zoo, a similar thing is done only for women. So I'd like to draw a couple lines using this illustration between reality and fantasies about harems. And also culturally, because in a lot of ways the Japanese culture is much more working together, ganbatte. We all tried our hardest to help one another to help the country. This idea is shown better in other ways in other places, but I think one of the ways it shows up is in the harem. Everyone finds their job, finds their niche, and works hard at it, and helps one another however they can. It's fun because romance is fun, and it's nice to get to know one another, and we like helping people. But English-speaking culture is more one of consumption, more of individualism, more of greed, and taking everything that you want for yourself. And so the idea of the harem is morphed into this place of pleasure, debauchery, and not seeing your partners as equals, but trying to collect as many beautiful, objectified women as possible, which is terribly unfortunate. And so we see the harem as individual failures on the part of the people that participate in it. When we speak of harems as taboo or bad, when we think of harems as a bad thing, it's a reflexive prudishness, yes, but also an individual failure of a woman to find one man and to be the one to please that one man, where that might not necessarily be true or might not necessarily be something that a woman is interested in. On top of that, several of the English-speaking media's cultural romances in themselves objectify a person, especially if it's in the action or other kind of drama where the woman is seen as the prize, a trophy at the end, for going through some character arc in itself. So what's your favorite dating sim, harem, or relationship confuckery that happens? I'm Ray Richards, the Sugar Ray. I'm a writer. I am going through a hard time like we all are, and I would very much so appreciate it if you gave my Patreon a look. I actually chose this subject because I'm kind of writing a video game. I'm writing a story, and I've just thought about what I want for the possibility of a harem ending in the middle of this multiple choice kind of visual novel kind of thing. Like, oh, do you want that to be a possibility? And I've done a lot of thinking about what goes into a harem, how would you write that, how do you work that, and how does that individually work for the characters in their goals and their ideas about life. There's not a lot of women who are like, yeah, I want to be one among 4 wives of this person. Well, there's a lot of human drama and there's a lot of interesting things that can be taken from this idea of the harem and from this idea of relationships and how we think about ourselves and how we think about our relation to other people. So yeah, subscribe. You probably won't get a lot more like this, but you might get a lot more. I mean, I am that word that means I can do things. I am not immovable in the things I'm interested in, and I'm very open to suggestion. Everyone should follow me on Patreon, but if you have extra cash, I would be open to your financial support. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.